Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Public Safety regular session, Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. Call to order. First, we will approve minutes, but I assume we don't have a quorum quite yet.
It doesn't appear that we've got a quorum, so we'll need to skip that agenda item. Nicole, have you let everyone in who's a member of the public?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
So
yeah, we'll need to skip that agenda item. If Maquiba and or Shruti can join us, then we can circle back and take care of that business later.
Okay, thank you. So then we'll move to the Police Department business, report on monthly statistics and training.
Yes, thank you. For this month, we had 4,275 calls for service, resulting in 141 adult arrests, 7 juvenile referrals. As you look at the statistics, which we provided in your packet, we're making fairly consistent through the month. On all the statistical categories, they're fairly consistent. Do you guys have any questions about the individuals? If not, I'll move on to some cases of interest.
I do not. Thank you.
No questions.
Okay, seeing none, just a couple to be aware of for you. And I believe this actually occurred after the reporting period was over, but just to make you aware, 2 weekends ago, we did have a double shooting out on South Basswood Drive, which resulted in 1 death and 1 serious bodily injury. Potentially, he's going to be paralyzed for the rest of his life. We're currently involved in a series of other investigations, including a bank robbery which occurred yesterday. And then we have a number of sexual battery cases which occurred on North Dunn that we're still working on that I believe was 4 or 5 in total. I can't really go in depth on those because that's still an open case. But of those, just to let you know that they have been happening and there is suspects in that. But as of yet, the case is not closed enough for me to comment much beyond those. So moving on to training, we'll move on to the training hours for the month, which was 672.5.
Captain Oldham?
Yes, sir.
Can I actually go back? You said on North Dunn, and again, recognizing just the area, is this close to University campus?
Close to 17th Street.
Say it again?
Close to 17th Street.
Okay, and assuming that, BPD is working in collaboration with IUPD.
In these cases, no. We've identified a suspect and we're moving forward with our cases.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I'm sorry.
No, my apologies for interrupting. Go ahead.
No. I just want to make sure I got everybody. As far as training hours, again, 672.5 hours. We had 1 sergeant attend a SWAT command decision-making and leadership course. That's actually the second of those 2 advanced courses. We had an officer attend the field training officer course. 2 officers completed field trauma care, which is tourniquet and trauma care certification. And then we had the monthly critical incident response team and civil disturbance unit trainings that accounted for those. In terms of community engagement for the month, there were 7 events, which took up 47.2 hours, personnel hours, and 19 officers or other personnel were involved in that. These included the Monroe County United Ministries Resource Fair, the Out of the Darkness Suicide Prevention Walk at Switchyard Park, the Longview Mobile Home Park Neighborhood Association meeting, and the Citizens Police Academy, which culminates this evening, which is one reason why the chief cannot be with us this evening. He's actually teaching a course this evening at Citizens Academy, which is taking place as we speak. Any questions about any of those things? If not, moving to the police social worker. Those ladies had 48 referrals this week, or this month, with 307 contacts. They were able to assist a community member getting a gender change letter for her new updated license. They continue to build a relationship with a couple experiencing homelessness, and they've been connected to numerous services that they were very hesitant to use at first. They were very nervous about this. I think they'd experienced some kind of letdowns in other communities beforehand, and they weren't quite ready to commit, but I think our social workers have done a great job with them. And then we had the National Conference on Police Social Work, which was a major success. That occurred during the month of October and had people from all over the country that attended. We had well in excess of 100 attendees, and they spent several days learning and discussing and kind of moving the whole profession forward. Mary Catherine Carmichael was our MC for that and did a fantastic job. We'd like to thank her for doing that. And overall, I think it was just a great experience for all of us that were involved. So I think that's just about it for the general business, other than the community service specials took 386 calls for service this month.
Thank you, Captain.
Sir.
I was just saying, thank you.
No, you're welcome. There are, I believe, 2 letters of appreciation, which I'm sorry didn't print out well enough on my copy to explain them to you in depth, other than the fact that one of them is from a gentleman, an elderly gentleman who was physically disabled that the deputy chief happened to come upon one evening out at Eastland Plaza, and was able to take some time and spend some time with the gentleman, get kind of squared away on where he was and with some travel arrangements and some other things. And the second of which was from a lady, and I'm sorry, I don't remember her name, who was experiencing a little issue in the roadway that one of our officers, Eric Doyle, came upon and was able to help her out of that situation. And I believe Captain Pedigo has the synopsis on personnel and hiring.
Just give me 1 second. So that was second. So we're moving to general business. Do we have any general business? Or was that all?
I think Scott might have jumped around a little.
I apologize.
I think we're actually at purchases and expenditures.
Very good. Do we have any big purchases?
You do. You've got, I want to say it's $38,000 coming through this month for some repairs to the basement from the flooding. That'll be on your sheets this month. Purchase sheets for the purchase and building of 13 squad cars. They'll be coming probably 1 or 2 at a time, just by the length of time it's taking us to get them built. So those will be the major expenditures you're going to get. Each of the squads by themselves will be right at the $30,000 mark by the time you add up everything that goes into them, a little over that actually.
Is there any anticipation on when the repairs from the flood damage, I guess, that you project will be completed?
We're getting close. They laid carpet last week. They finished up with some of the flooring. They're still working on a couple rooms. One of the big things we're waiting on right now from the construction phase is the lockers from the locker rooms, because they're in a little short supply right now, supply and demand. So they're trying to source those from a couple different vendors. Once we have those in place, we should be just about 100% complete. We are still waiting on some furniture. So as soon as that arrives, we'll get people moved back in their positions, back in their offices, and hopefully get everybody back on 2 levels rather than trying to live on the 1 level we've been living on for the last 4 months. It's getting a little crowded.
Thank you.
I would like to hope, honestly, Rafi, by Thanksgiving, everybody should be back in the building and back where they belong.
I hope so. How about next on the agenda, personnel?
Captain Pedigo.
All right, thank you. Currently have current number of sworn personnel is 88. We did lose one this approximately a week ago to IUPD. I think he just started over there this week, was his first week. So we have dropped to 88. However, when you deduct the number that are either in the FTO program or sick, out for extended sick or military, puts our usable number down to 74. We do have 5 currently that are in the field training program. So those officers do not, they cannot complete a training field and prepare them for patrolling on their own. We do have 3 that are currently still in our hiring process. Last month, I asked the board for approval to give 5 conditional offers of employment. All 5 were approved by the board. However, when I contacted the applicants with those conditional offers. 2 of them declined. So we currently still have 3 in the hiring process, which is experiencing some delays due to staffing issues with the company that we contract with for our medical testing in Indianapolis. They too, much like everyone else, are experiencing short staffing. So they are not scheduled to go for their actual medical and psychological testing until mid-December at this time. Once this current process is complete and I am able to secure spots at the Law Enforcement Academy for those that remain, I will begin posting and will hopefully host another hiring process to start over again.
Go ahead, Luis. Did you have a question, Luis?
You can go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, are you Captain Pedigo? Or
yes.
Captain Pedigo, did the 2 officers that did they provide you with some reason why? Did they get offers from somewhere else, or?
One of the applicants stated that she was currently she had entered another process since she had started ours and felt that that might be, I believe the wording she used was potentially a better fit for her. And the other, I reached out just to inquire as, if there was something with the process or what the reasoning was, and I got no response from him.
Thank you.
Captain, can I ask?
Sure.
So you said we have 88 at the
Correct.
74 who are actually in duty, if I remember correctly, if I understood you correctly. So then, and then you said 5 in training, 3 hiring, and 3 the 5 we hired, extended offers, conditional offers, 3 accepted. So does that mean we might be at 96 if the 8?
No, the 88 number would include the 5 that are currently in the field training program. They are sworn officers. They're just not able to function on solo patrol.
Part of the 74.
No, because the 74 is those that we consider quote unquote usable as a solo patrol officer. So they would be in that number between the 74 and the 88.
So there's basically, so I was thinking there's 14 in that number, but it's really 9 plus 5. I get it. Okay. And then so we get to 91 if the 3 can go through, and then you'll have 9 openings. If the 3.
Well, starting once we hit January 1, then we're at that 105 cap. So actually it will extend by 5 more.
Got it. Okay. And then you said those that remain, that's what you meant, to get from 91 to 105 to try to fill those spots, to continue to look for folks to join the force. Okay. Good luck with that. Boy, this is like, it never ends.
It is a continuous cycle.
Thank
for
you.
certain.
Any further questions for Captain Pediga on personnel? Makuiba, welcome. Good to see you. Nope, then how about if we go back now to the second item of the agenda, approve the minutes from October 19th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from October 19th, 2021, please?
So moved.
Have a second?
I can't second it because I have to abstain.
Why do you have to abstain?
I had a class that day, so I wasn't able to.
You can
I'll
still
second the
approve the
motion.
minutes
I'll
even
second the motion. Second the motion.
So thank you. Yeah.
We have a motion on the table. Nicole, can you take?
Yes, Luis,
Yes.
Rafi,
Yes.
Makuiba. I'll abstain.
Makuiba, you are still able to vote even though you didn't attend that meeting.
Okay. Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. I think that concludes the police department business. Any, Rafi, Makuiba? Yes, okay. So we move to fire department. First is report on monthly statistics and training.
Great, thank you. So for monthly statistics on on-call volume, I just pointed out in our last few meetings that we have exceeded our normal annual call volume. So looking at October's numbers added in, we are at almost 4,700 calls. Just a few years ago, we finally broke 4,000 calls. So that just to put that in perspective of how busy our department is. The calls to IU are holding steady at their normal, what we expect. So there's nothing out of line on that. Obviously, when the students are here, we do run more calls to IU, but it is within normal. Our response times are still holding at the normal percentages. Again, we will update these reporting statistics on next year when we start tracking the turnout times and the travel times, as opposed to a conglomerate of all of the responses all in one time tracking mechanism. But with that, we're on scene within 4 minutes, 63% of the time, and on scene within 8 minutes, 96% of the time. Let's see, inspections. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, I thought I heard something. So for inspections, we are still down a deputy fire marshal. We'll get into the personnel side on that, but that means that we have one inspector in the office, and they have been very, very tied up with the new hospital opening. So that is a vast majority of that person's work week has been doing the final inspections to get that open. We do anticipate a larger than expected volume of new occupancy inspections about this time next year. Looking at all the construction plans that have come across the fire department's desk, we're actually gearing up to be able to get some on-shift personnel trained, because there are going to be days where there's just too many things that are trying to be opened at the same time that need to be inspected. But the crews are out doing pre-plans, and we are sitting around 35% of our annual goal on that. And again, we've been down an inspector almost the entire time. And with COVID protocols, we were not out actively engaged doing a lot of these inspection activities beyond the ones required to open or complaint inspections. For our training hours, October, we had a little over 4,000, in fact, almost 4,100 hours of training. We are on track with the end of the year to finish out. On the report, you can see there were a few months that we were lower than the normal hours. There are plenty of months where we've exceeded the training hours, and we are making a strong finish at the end of the year. In fact, our crews are working with the Indiana Department of Homeland Security hazmat trailer. So it got dropped off in our county. So our firefighters and the surrounding county firefighters are training at our training site this week. Let's see, for other than that, statistics side, again, nothing that we saw of concern other than the elevated call volume, which we are managing to the best of our ability and checking into as to why. And like I've said in previous meetings, it's just more of everything. It's not like one thing has gone up. It's just more of everything we do.
Any questions, anybody? Letters of appreciation and commendation.
I don't have any in the report. As we've said in the past, people are more than happy to tell us when we don't do well, but we don't always get letters of appreciation when we do well.
General business.
So I have a few things, and then I want to close our general business with the report on the live burn cleanup activities. For general business, with our department, we're still operating at a temporary headquarters, still working on the flood claims. So there's a lot of work that goes into that with the insurance companies validating what we're claiming for replacement. Work on goes with the underground river project that is going through our parking lot. I think it's right next to police headquarters now. With us not being in our headquarters, it will actually help out quite a bit and speed up the project. But we do anticipate not being able to access that building for a little while they're doing work. We do have remediation crews that have been in there. Mold testing came back for the headquarters. While nothing was above a toxic limit, we do have issues that need to be addressed. They are now recommending full mold remediation for the entire building. So that's going to be a lot of energy and effort that goes into this, whether or not we go back to that building in the long run. And then I really want to focus on tonight, there's a lot of people in the audience, but I wanted to talk about the controlled burn, what started this issue, why we do it, and then what has been done since. So the process to do an acquired structure live burn, and I want to point out that we do have a burn facility down on the south end of the city. There's only so many scenarios you can play out with that particular facility. You know, by the time you've run 3 or 4 drills in there, you know every inch of the building, and it really kind of starts, you know, losing its benefit at that point, other than being able to experience the heat and the smoke. So for this controlled burn, we had 94 firefighters that were trained during that week, which is really helping to improve our capabilities and making us better prepared for a real fire. You know, there are benefits. We've heard concerns about, you know, why did we burn it down the last day? There are benefits to an external or what we fire operation. Essentially, when fires get too large to control, the best thing you can do is try to keep it contained to that building. When you talk about the density here in Bloomington, this is how we would prevent a fire from going from property to property and really affecting a lot more people than what it originally started as. When we get into it, Bloomington Fire Department, we follow every step of the process required by law and regulation. That includes approvals from IDEM, which is the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. We did consult with other fire agencies that have a lot more experience with acquired structure burns because we don't have a lot of experience with it. In fact, I think the last one that Bloomington did was maybe a decade ago, if not longer. So we did a lot of due diligence. We checked it from our standpoint at the moment when we were told that it was safe. We had no concerns that we would not be able to contain the fire to the property, which is why we decided to move forward. So that process required public notice. That went out September 21st in the Herald Times. It has some fairly antiquated laws, but it had to be posted in the library and several other places. All of that was done. The property owner himself reached out to the neighbors directly surrounding. So again, we were concerned about fire, potential fire spread and things like that. So he did above and beyond by reaching out to the neighbors directly adjacent to his property. The house was prepared at the property owner's expense. It was fairly expensive to remediate everything that was on the IDEM checklist, which unfortunately did not include lead paint. The property owners obtained all the necessary legal approval from the city to demolish their house. This was challenged, and the Historic Preservation Commission did vote to approve the demolition. And at that point, the owner offered the house to us for training purposes, which, you know, when we discussed with the owner, you know, a lot of people said that this was done to save money. I'm going to say it's pretty balanced. The cost of remediation offsets, you know, a lot of the issues that would have been additional dumpsters for hauling off material that has now been burnt. So it is a balancing between the two costs. I'm not going to say that it saved them any money. In fact, I would go to say now this has probably cost quite a bit more. Since the initial notification of the lead flakes, so I was on scene during that burn. Towards the very end, about the time when the building collapsed in and it was sitting in the basement, semi-smoldering, is when I got the first text message notice that there was an issue where a citizen had taken a flake and tested it and said it was positive for lead. So we immediately started our notifications and we really started to deal with it. Originally on allowing that fire to kind of burn itself out. So we immediately extinguished it instead of letting it burn. We did not contest the unofficial test results. We really focused on just starting cleanup, the worst case assumption at that point. Contacted and coordinated with IDEM. So they sent out an evaluator. I also informed our Monroe County Emergency Management of what had happened, seeking guidance from them. Our crews went out the day after to assess the impact and really start cleaning up. So picking up the bigger flakes. I have to thank the Office of the Mayor. You know, they were really quick to get us some printed door hanging materials that were left on doors where no one answered, where we could talk to. And we really just tried to get out in the neighborhood, start assessing what the issues were, the extent of where we saw the paint flakes and ash, and really start building a map, so to speak, of what we needed to focus on. We also established an online form. That form had two purposes. One, it was kind of an assessment. If people saw issues, we were hoping they would report those issues by remediation, but also allowed a very targeted page where those who were concerned about this could receive communication above and beyond what is published to the media on the website and all the other forms of communication we used. Speaking of that, we have done face-to-face. I have personally taken and answered almost every phone call. I think there's a few that have been, gone through our admin assistant, but a vast majority I've handled personally. I've answered to this date every email that has come in to me. We provided media releases. There is a dedicated web page. It is in need of some updates, but it is there. Social media, and we did also deliver those printed materials by firefighters the day after. So the map itself, we integrated information from IDEM with samples gathered by the city, on-site assessments, and then we did take into consideration the reported data from a citizen where he said he had taken paint samples or paint flake samples, which actually extended from the IDEM map and even our awareness of going out and looking through the neighborhood. So looking at all those factors, the map has been developed. As our consultants are out and reviewing properties, they're going within that map, the remediation area. They're also looking at adjacent properties. And this map has been updated at least once where we found more debris. It wasn't readily apparent just by the initial walking through and checking the neighborhood. Let's see, it's important to know that we've hired trained environmental professionals. So both Environmental Assurance Company, Inc., or EACI, and Vet Environmental, which we'll refer to as Vet, they have been guiding the process since they were hired to ensure that lead paint flakes and any other potential contamination is properly handled. We had surface wipe tests that were looking for that presence of lead dust. Those came back with no detectable traces of lead. The air sampling test from cleanup crews, they have a personal monitor that they wear. It's required by OSHA, and it kind of evaluates the atmosphere they're in while they're doing cleanup. So those came back with a worker who's been actively cleaning up the lead pieces for an 8-hour shift, has had no detectable traces of lead, which is good, meaning that cleanup activities are not generating this lead dust that some people think is out there. Air sampling tests from VET around the area. So they set up area tests. We heard concerns about, cars traveling or people walking, or even some people that were mowing their yards and taking care of their yard work or cleaning up their issues on their own, was generating, airborne lead dust. Those tests have also come back with no detectable traces of lead. We do expect to receive soil samples that have been taken in and around the area on or around November 19th. And then VET is also, or VET has been conducting the X-ray fluorescent or XRF testing. And we're working on getting a preliminary report and what does that mean and what are they seeing. I will also mention that we've coordinated with public health professionals at Monroe County Health Department. When you get into this, talking with IDEM, they're responsible for reporting, for monitoring, but when it comes down to how do you actually handle the lead or what's safe, that is in a public health realm. So we have been up to date, and we went from the not having test results, guidance to residents to not touch it, let's get it tested, let's figure out what it is and how bad it is, to now having known testing results, which says that, you can handle it. They recommend wearing gloves and washing your hands afterwards. If you want to be abundantly cautious, then, it said perhaps you may consider wearing a mask while you're raking your leaves or doing cleanup. Again, I want to point out that the workers that are out there doing this all day, every day for 8 hours, have not generated the lead dust that people are concerned about. So with everything being said, as the representative of the department, I honestly will regret this. This is not, we don't intend to cause harm. We are here to help. We are here to save people. We are here to do good training so that our people are prepared. We did not know that this was an issue prior to the burn. If we had had any inclination that, if lead paint had been on a checklist to check for, I've talked with the property owner, and I think all of us would have walked away from this with saying it was just not worth it. I will go ahead and put it out. I know we have some council members present, and they said that they really wanted to put some legislation to prevent this from happening. With or without that legislation, I can assure you that we do not intend to conduct another controlled burning required structure again. For me today, it's lead. If we get all this worked out as part of the checklist, I don't know what else is in a home that may be a health hazard in the future. It's not worth the risk. We did receive some very valuable training out of this, but it's not worth the risk. So I can assure everyone that as the chief of the department, we will not be doing that in the future. I guess in closing, I want to kind of give a status update of what I know. And as of November 16th or today, the cleanup companies have reported that 59 homes have been remediated, which includes the ones in the immediate and secondary. They're also starting to work out into that outlying area. And again, as we're going through along this map, they're checking the properties next to it to see if they're seeing signs or issues that need to be remediated. I'm also forwarding all of the community issues. So I get emails where someone says, I have known, paint flakes on my property and it's outside of the mapping zone. There is no exact science to this. We are trying to do everything we can with validated scientific reports. And to be fair, we're out there and we have been out there and we will continue to be out there until the environmental consultants let us know that everything that should be done has been done. And with that, I'm done with general business.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions?
Thank you for that thorough response. Of course, that was definitely on my my list. Just got done teaching, so I'm trying to switch my brain over to Board of Public Safety issues. Again, thank you for that thorough response and understanding the need to have a dedicated conversation to this. And we will eventually get to public comment. My question with the general business is, or more so my thought process with fellow board members, if we should add an update from the consultants moving forward until we know that it's completely mitigated as it relates to lead. Could we get an update from the consultants for the next couple of board meetings?
I have no problem. I also want to point out that when a written report is provided by the environmental consultants, that the city does plan on publishing that, not making someone put out a request for the information. So in sake of transparency, we want to make sure that everything that we know, everyone else knows. Okay. So when those reports are finalized, we will also include what we refer to as an after action. Every fire within the city that we go to, we look at an after action, what went well, what could be done better, so that we learn lessons and we capture those lessons for the future of this department. Okay.
And then it's my understanding with the environmental group that the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, will they continue to be in conversation or communicate with you all? Help me understand that process.
I guess I'm trying to understand. So you're talking about like what kind of communication do we have with the consultants?
Or with Indiana Department of Environmental Management?
After they provided their thought of a map, it's been very little communication. We do check in. They don't offer resources on this necessarily. They're leaving it to the department, to the city to mitigate. And that's why we hired environmental professionals to help guide our process. When we talk about our consultants, I have a daily and sometimes 2 and 3 times a day meeting with them. Obviously, at the beginning, we were meeting quite more often than we are now, which is at least a morning check-in and an afternoon check-in of, what do you have coming up? We're also handling issues for the contractors, right? So just logistical things like porta potties and other things that they need. So we're handling those issues, authorizing the work for the day, and then getting a report at the end of the day of what work has been accomplished.
Okay, thank you.
Captain Moore, again, thank you for providing that information. I have much more so. So I got one question again, a specific request, and that is when it comes to your communication with the public, if you can please, keep the language and the content around, 8th or 9th grade. Don't get, too scientific. Again, and I'm not saying that certainly with an understanding that we have, one of the most prestigious universities within our community. But again, just from the perspective of making sure that everybody can understand just specifically where it is that they can report and have conversations with you, members of the department, who they need to contact if they have, questions and so forth, being aware of not overly using acronyms and making sure that the conversation is something that's only understood between, professionals. That'll be essential. Also, if you do use any, electronic platforms, to make sure that it allows residents, I know Google provides information where you can translate the language on the page directly, so you don't necessarily have to publish information, for different individuals. So again, that's kind of the specific request, again, just in making sure that folks are aware to keep the language in a way that, lay folks can understand it. My question is, and I'll make this assumption, I didn't hear anything specifically about, as much as we know and understand our IDEM and our work with EACI is obviously looking at the impact on our environment, but I do want to make sure that that also includes, obviously our natural environment, our wildlife, along the lines of, individual people, obviously, looking at, the things relative to our, animal and plant life. And also, is there, from your perspective, again, knowing that, we are in the situation where, again, I think you said that cleanup and removal continues to happen at this point, where is there a plan from a perspective of, after cleanup, what things look like from 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, to really understand, the impact in terms of the environment. And I certainly hope that you are now advocating that IDEM update their protocols for looking for lead paint and other potential things, and certainly that's probably more of a statement than a question. So thank you.
If I may just address a few points that you did bring up. Our concerns, immediate concerns, or anything that could risk health and safety. So health department, others are focused on the child range, the age group of people that are more affected by lead. When I spoke with IDEM today, they said that this is not like a sustained release. Those are where they start running into problems, where you have a factory that's releasing even low-level contents of lead over a 20-year period or a 10-year period. So when we talked about what this is what they call an incidental release. This is not an ongoing threat. This is not a continual issue. So when we go through with remediation and it is verified through testing that this has been properly remediated, there will always be a concern as to whether or not there is something, and we can consider those. I am glad that you brought up the side of considering other things. We were working with the health department to get the approval and the testing kits So we do anticipate on offering the finger stick blood tests for not only our firefighters on scene if they require or would like it, but any resident in the affected area or around that would like to have that baseline test done. Once we get the training, then we would be more than happy to come out on site and offer those at no cost. The health department's been a great partner throughout the entire pandemic. We've been helping with vaccinations, other projects. So this is just another lead off where we already had the skill set. We already do the finger prick test for blood glucose levels if someone is having a diabetic emergency. So it's learning the sample collection process so we don't contaminate any samples by surface contact of anything. So once we get that training, then we do plan on rolling out that program and offering it to help offer another level of comfort for citizens. And if any of those do come back, then again, that's a baseline for future recommendations.
Chief, thank you for, as Maquiba said, and Rafi, thank you for coming and being so thorough about what happened and what we're doing moving forward. I have a question. You said, and I don't want to spend much time looking back. It is, it happened. You feel badly about it. The department does. I'm wondering, you said we were told we were safe. By that, you mean IDEM said that we were safe in doing this?
Yeah, so we're not environmental management experts. That's why part of the state process to do a acquired structure live burn requires the IDEM inspection. So they had us to the extent, like we even had to remove the thermostats out of the house because they contained mercury in them. So they had a very long checklist of things that had to be remediated. We went through the entire checklist, and at that point, that's the environmental people saying that this was okay to burn. And that's the report we went off of. And that's, again, I've checked all around the state. These happen quite often all around the state. And it's never been on any of their checklists. It's never been a consideration. And there's never even been prior complaints of this in the past. So I also, I guess I should point out that we are going to be at the state level asking for this change. Because even if I don't do it here in Bloomington ever again, that doesn't mean that it's not still happening all over the state and could be causing this problem for other communities.
Oh, Luis, did you have a follow-up to that?
I do, but go ahead. No, go ahead.
I have two follow-up questions to that, Chief. One, I see, quote, "I don't feel safe in my own yard at the moment," quote, from a resident within the area. Can you help support, like, how do you answer that from someone within that residential area? If they're on this line right now, they're saying that they don't feel safe. Can you help us understand like their concerns of safety and kind of speaking to this quote from a resident?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we've got environmental professionals in the health department. What we do know is that the paint flakes themselves do contain a high concentration of lead. As we have found, even after the rain, those paint flakes have been fairly stable. So some of the earlier considerations of the ash that would disintegrate if you tried to touch it is not there. The paint flakes themselves, the biggest hazard is from ingestion. And that could be through, somebody actually picking up a paint chip and eating it, or touching a paint chip and then eating food or something. To put this in perspective, if you go fishing, you touch something, a lead weight, it's 100% lead. The paint chips that we're looking at are somewhere between the realm of 10 to 20% lead. So, when it comes down to the hazard of handling it, it's keep it out of people through ingestion and wash your hands afterwards. We have got all of the surface samplings and all the air monitoring samples that kind of push off the thought of the lead dust issue. That has blanketed the community. That has not been found through any test results at this point. So what it does boil down to is if there are paint flakes, we need to get them up. If they're in your yard, we do have residents that it's hard to mitigate, clean up paint flakes now that they're buried under 8 or 9 inches of leaves. We've got to get the leaves up. Those are also going to be tested and disposed of properly, so that we don't mulch those or we don't compost those and then perpetuate a cycle. So we're doing everything we can to basically get the paint chips up. If you don't see any paint flakes, then that means that there is not an issue to worry about at this point. And that comes directly from communication we've gotten from our consultants that, you know, again, we're focusing on areas that would have the greatest impact. Playgrounds, things that come into contact, so railings, mailboxes, you know, that's the point-on-point transmission hazard area. And our consultants have done a really great job of, I mean, literally vacuuming people's yards and houses and, you know, driveways and everything else. So I guess what I could offer to reassure people is when the environmental consultants have gone and done all of their testing, they will tell us it's been properly remediated. And at that point, that should be some reassurance for everyone.
Second follow-up question. So in this moment, for residents that are perhaps online right now, they might have their own questions. My understanding is that they should not do anything as it relates to trying to mitigate the situation on their own, leave it up to professionals. So we don't, hopefully people won't be burning any leaves to feel like they're helping to support, to eliminate lead. Is that correct? Like, what would you want the residents to do, just to kind of leave stuff alone, or?
The guidance we've gotten is that people can resume their normal yard activities. Okay. You are not allowed to burn leaves in the city limits anyway. So if we did have someone trying that, we'd be good to call and come deal with it. We have asked that even those, the city had a pilot program, the 1,000 households who mulch, that they forego, you know, participating in that pilot program this year and get all of their leaves to the curb so that they can be tested and then disposed of properly. There are a lot of residents that went out and mitigated their own properties. And even afterwards, our mitigation crews have come by and tried to, you know, get anything that was there that they could see. So what we are aware of is that the air sampling from the workers themselves means that they're disturbing all this material for 8 hours a day, and they're not bringing up detectable levels of lead. The air monitoring within the neighborhoods occurred when people were cutting their grass and blowing their leaves and driving, and there were no detectable levels of lead. So there's, again, according to the health department, if you were to wear gloves, wash your hands, and they even said perhaps wear a mask, that, you know, property owners could work on all this stuff with little to no risk at all.
Thank you.
Chief, I have one final question. So I keep thinking about all the things that you were doing, and they sound right to me. I don't know anything about it. So it does sound like a lot of thought's been put into this, and the experts are actually trying to do the right thing, but which I appreciate, and all of us do. So the question is, for how long are we going to do this? And my worry is, and it's not a worry based on anything, my concern is that if, say, you said that maybe EACI would once or twice more, they would issue reports. So I'm assuming that is not to say that if a resident comes and discovers anything 3 or 4 months from now, that they couldn't call, I assume, the city or the department or somewhere within Bloomington to get help in solving the issue. I'm assuming that is correct?
From what I've been told by the environmental consultants, the contractors, DET, is that they will issue a blanket, you know, basically a statement that these properties have been evaluated and everything is within the normal parameters for what is allowable. You know, for reference, the soil samples have to be compared to the EPA guidelines of what was pre-existing before humans, you know, moved in and had anything. So, you know, everything is going to be mitigated until they tell us that it is clean and is good. And at that point, then, you know, we may be still dealing with some spot issues, or someone may say that they found something. To put this in perspective, you know, today we had a few of our contractors that, you know, one of our afternoon meetings said they had residents that were mad at them because they didn't clean up all the paint flakes, and they were doing their own home remodeling projects, and there were blue paint flakes all over the property, not the white ones that they were contracted to clean. So there's always going to be an issue of what else and how far And one of our questions we asked at the very beginning is, how do we know when it's clean enough? And that's what we're relying on the environmental experts to tell us.
In understanding the history of different types of issues as it relates to lead, I remember back at in my hometown in Fort Wayne, I lived in an older house, and the concern was lead because it was given to those that have low socioeconomic statuses. It was lead paint that was in there. So oftentimes the concern was always about lead. You can think of other things historically. So there is a true still concern, even if it doesn't directly impact me. The interconnectedness of our community is really still concerned about the levels of lead, as you know. Curious about how can we ensure what, I guess this could be a statement or a question for the board to consider. What does it look like and what does it mean to create policies to ensure safety, knowing that you, Chief Moore, are saying this will never perhaps happen again? How can we create, what policies can we create so that we can ensure that something like this doesn't happen? So our future generation, our legacy, our kids, our students won't experience something like this.
I think it may be a question for the lawyers, but from my awareness of how laws work, the board does have power over the fire department and the police department. It could be incorporated in our rules and regs. It would be more appropriate to perhaps consider it in the local burden ordinances themselves that already manage and kind of spell out the rules for burning within the city. Again, our department is not fond of repeating past issues. So we do learn lessons, we do get better, and this will be captured. And I think it's going to be in all of our training plans from here on that, if 5-10 years from now and none of us are around and there's someone else in my seat, that if someone says, hey, I got a great idea, we should burn down a house in the Bloomington, IDEM says it's fine and everyone says it's okay, there's going to be a cliff note in that policy and how we do our standard operating guidelines to say no. So again, the more places we can capture it, the stronger an argument it would be. But I can assure you, this is not something that I am intending on repeating as long as I'm the chief here.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll take that into consideration, definitely process that, especially since when we do have a full board, and discuss that and add that to our the spaces that we can on the board.
And again, just very briefly, Chief Moore, I'd like to again make sure I have your assurance that when it comes to your communication with the members of our public, that again, we'll make every effort to make sure that the information, obviously, we are talking about a much more, a complex system than just simply the fire department. And, I know that you don't speak, for the mayor, but I want to be sure that, the communication is accessible, that members of our public can, in fact, be able to contact members of the fire department. Again, removing the layers from an understanding that, again, we recognize that there's science behind the things that are happening, but if the members of our residents or members of our community need to report or they need information, that the Bloomington Fire Department will make sure that that language, is accessible for the members of our public, and certainly it being, available in diverse forms. And that's, again, and I do, if I'm hearing you correctly, EACI EACI will essentially just give us kind of a bill of of health, but obviously in looking at environmental disasters, catastrophes, we recognize that things are often punitive or they last long. Excuse me, not punitive, but that they that they last. And so I guess it'll be something that it'd be important for us to revisit, and I certainly want to encourage the members of our audience to certainly work with their represented officials in making sure we are accountable in doing it. So again, thank you.
I guess what I heard from you is you want an affirmation that the communications will be at an understandable level, on a steady pace, up to date. We do intend on releasing the full scientific report on top of it. But if you would like, what I can do is forward you all the communications that have gone out thus far. And if you have suggestions on how they could be improved upon, or if they need to be altered for future communications, I am more than happy to accept any of your recommendations on that. When I read what has gone out, this goes through a fairly substantial process. And I think we try to draft it where people can understand it. So, when I draft the initial communication, if someone within our office group that is not tied to firefighting, that's not tied to, environmental management, anything like that, if they can't understand it or they have questions, we try to clarify it before it goes out. So we are doing everything we can to make sure that it is what I would refer to as like digestible, that it is useful information that is digestible by the people we are trying to get it out to. But that doesn't mean we're not going to publish the full scientific study, which I won't even fully understand.
Well, yeah, of course. Again, I'm not saying, to in any way, make sure that, like everything has to be. So, but I think just more from the understanding that the members of our public need to be able to contact where they can make contact with someone either from, the fire department, receive information as that relates to kind of their immediate health and safety, and so forth. But, just again, making sure that
yeah, absolutely. My phone number, my email have been put on all of the communication. The city webpage, the bloomington.in.gov /BFD burn info, keeps the most up-to-date mapping, keeps the communication there. We are publishing every press release on there. We're publishing, the letters to residents. So, we are making every good faith effort to communicate in every medium possible. I still go out into the neighborhood. In fact, I've been in that neighborhood pretty much every day since it's happened, talking to residents that had concerns, that wanted to meet face-to-face to ask more questions. So I'm being as available as possible. And again, the phone numbers, the email, all that, it comes directly to me so that I can answer it.
Thanks.
Yes, I would like to review that material to help out, to help with that. Thank you.
Chief, a final question. I am curious, something you just said, and I've seen questions in the chat. Are you saying that people in the community have been writing you or calling you and you've responded to them directly? Is that what I heard you say? That
is correct. We get phone messages so that it comes through, either rings through to my office phone or it'll ring to our admin assistant, go to a voicemail. I get a list of them and I've called every single one of them back. I've also personally answered every email that's come across for people asking for clarification, saying the cleanup crews came through and I don't think they did a good enough job. Any communication that has come through has been answered directly by me at this point.
And I trust that continues to be true into the foreseeable future.
Yes.
Thank you. Anything further? Well, thank you. Thank you, Chief. The next item on the agenda is purchases, expenditures, and procurements.
All right, so obviously with the cleanup discussion, when we get the bill, that is estimated to be around 118,000. If they do get into the outline areas and find more issues, it may extend beyond that. We have around $50,000 for fire gear that we just received. We had the heat in 2 of our fire stations go out, and unfortunately, due to the age of the stations, they've both been recommended for replacement. Approximately just under $20,000 for those. And we are still working on flood recovery replacements, moving into the temporary headquarters. Some of those invoices are coming due. So you should see somewhere around the realm of around $71,000 going towards that. Based on our estimates and everything that we're looking at with all the equipment replacement, we still have the solar inverters, all that. The flood replacement we've got several $100,000 left that will be coming through on that at some point. But that's what you should expect for this round.
When do you anticipate the repairs resulting from the flood to be completed for you?
We are evaluating other options at this point. We have 2 things to consider. One, the building was designed with a vulnerability that has now been shown. So all of the communication, electronics, basically the heart of that building was in the basement that was completely flooded. There are concerns that even if we built this back right, and we moved everything up to a higher level, that the night of the flood, we could not turn left or right out of that station without driving through the flood water. In fact, it almost cost us the $1 million aerial truck. It got water into its main computer. Luckily, all of that has been handled very quickly, and it did not cause permanent damage. But I believe the discussions we're having is looking for a new site. If one can't be found, then obviously we may have to see what we can do to go to that site. It's a very big, complex issue that we are doing our due diligence. But as of this moment, we are in temporary headquarters until we can identify whether or not any more money needs to be put back into that building or not before we even think about either moving back in or building a new building.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Personnel?
So for personnel issues, we currently have 4 firefighter openings. That does include 2 recruits that we just hired that went to the Indianapolis Fire Department. We are still down 1 deputy fire marshal. We do have a finalist. We've interviewed. They're going through background checks and the physical. I think Captain Pettigo said it, that the healthcare provider that both the police and fire department use for those physicals is really, really booked. So it is delaying the hiring of our new deputy fire marshal, but we do have a finalized candidate at this point that we're running through all the due diligence before they're offered a condition of employment. We have 5 on FMLA, and I think that's it for personnel issues.
Thank you. Any questions? So we move any old business? I don't believe, I can't think.
No old business.
Captain Oldham?
Yes, sir.
Did we have any CERT ARV deployment reports?
We do not.
Thank you. Don't leave me yet.
Not going anywhere.
New business, do you verbally certify payroll from October 8th to October 22nd, 2021?
On behalf of the chief, yes.
And I do as well.
Great, thank you. Now we are on item 8 on the agenda, petitions and communications. Those are for the general public to make comments to the board. They are limited to 3 minutes per person. Nicole, I saw you put it on the chat.
Yeah, for everyone to hear, the instructions are if you would like to speak to indicate so in the chat or use the raise your hand function. We did have one comment that we're granting a special accommodation to. Let me scroll back to read that out loud for the board. The comment comes from Sam Dove, and it says Classic Lanes has dangerous fire with no one hurt. Fire, bowling alleys, restroom. I find reports on emergency Facebook. So just so that's read into the record.
Thank you.
And so I will then hit the request to unmute for anyone who's raised their hand, and if they could state their name.
Hello, this is Kevin Keogh. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I live in the, I guess it's the green zone, and I have to compliment the captain, the fire captain, the fire chief, excuse me, that graph where he put the people in closest in the green zone. That was something else. I'm an auditor, so I guess one thing that concerns me is the independence of the consultant. And so that's one point I'd like to bring up. I have a couple. This is one key one, because we're asking them to give an opinion, and I have no idea what standards it's based on, but I would think that that there would be professional standards that the consultant would be held to, and I just want to confirm that. And you have to bear with me. I really have very little knowledge about this area, and it's kind of been, we're just trying to deal with it the best we can. And the other area, the question I have a concern, and I've expressed this to the fire chief, is as a property owner, it would be nice to have some type of, I call it an affidavit, because I have no idea what kind of report record would be sufficient, but something to the landowners that says, we've done these activities to your property to remediate this concern, and that based on the standards as applied, whoever this authoritative body says, my property is, I know it can't be risk-free, but it's the risk has been mitigated to an acceptable level, and I have no idea what that acceptable level is. So those are my two concerns that I'd just like to bring up and have noted. But I appreciate the opportunity that you give the property owners tonight to voice our concerns. So thank you very much. And I do appreciate all the work the fire chief and the subcontractors have done. So thank you.
All right, it looks like we have Jeff Richardson as the next speaker. Give me just a moment.
Yes, can you hear me? Great. Chief, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you. It's a rare occasion where someone in a public position actually says they're sorry and they made a mistake. It's amazing. And so I really appreciate that. That doesn't minimize some of the concerns that the neighbors have, and certainly yourself and your staff and your team. But it's something that is actually very moving to hear someone apologize in public life. So thank you for that. Thank you very much. I just wanted, you talk about communication, and one of the things that we've experienced in some of the neighborhood associations is that we, like you and the mayor and the city council, are under a lot of pressure to learn more and understand more what's going on. And so I'd like to suggest that you enlist the neighborhood associations as partners. You talked about partnership earlier, and we'd like to be your partners in communicating what is going on as some of your colleagues here on the board said, in a very clear, concise way. So people know, for example, what do we need to do now while this mitigation is going on? And how can we get certain information? There's a series of press releases going out, but if we put 6 of them together, you have to kind of pick and choose what items we're supposed to follow and who we're supposed to call. Just something very simple like a fact sheet or a FAQ, frequently asked questions. Again, we at the neighborhood association level are willing and eager to work with you. Finally, you said this already, but I want to say again, we are not only willing to work with you in response to these kinds of, let's call it crisis situations, but we'd like to partner with you on an ongoing basis. If there are things that we can do to help advance your work and support your work. So I just want to say again, thank you to you and your team, and am heartened by the fact that one of the things you said that most politicians cannot say, public people can say, knowing what I know now, I would have done something differently. And a rare comment by you, and thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to offer public comment?
Nicole, can you remind folks how to get to the raise hand function if you don't mind?
Yes, let me find it. People also, I would like to remind people also have the opportunity to ask for a chance to speak through the chat. And once again, Sam was a special case due to, they indicated that they would not be able to speak themselves through the meeting. So on my screen, it's under reactions, and there's the raise your hand function. I know some versions of it also have it in the comments for participants.
Nicole, it looks like Regina Moore has her raised hand on.
Yep, I have that now.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. Much appreciation to Chief Moore's report. Much appreciation for his report and his sincere remarks, and the plans that he has for the departmental policy in the future. I really do appreciate hearing that, Chief. Now that we're so much more aware of lead structures, lead issues in structural fires, I consider this almost what we call in education a teachable moment. I'd like to know a little bit more about what happens in fires in older structures where there probably would be lead paint also. I don't know if the chief can answer the question in your format, in your meeting format, but I'm concerned about what happens in an older neighborhood when a structure is burning, maybe not in the same way that we have in the planned burn on High Street. But what can people expect, or what should we be aware of in those instances? Thank you so much for listening.
So I'll just, this is Chris Wheeler, City Legal Department. And Regina, thank you for the comments, but this is just public comment. So we're just taking public comment and not answering questions. But the city does strongly urge you to reach out to the fire department and ask that question directly to them and have that dialogue. It's also something that I think this board, they're nodding their heads. This is something the board will likely want to discuss at a later date during one of their meetings, and you're always welcome to attend these public meetings and listen in.
Thank you.
It looks like Susan Sandberg has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I too appreciate the candor of Chief Moore, and also his comment about, his making a commitment that as long as he remains our chief, that there will be no other burns of this nature. But I'm just wondering if some assistance could come from the city council's end. He did mention something about the burning ordinance. There could be some language placed in that might put it more into perpetuity in terms of this being a policy going forward. And I also appreciate Regina's comment about fires in general. When there are real fires that occur in neighborhoods, when there is the possibility of lead being being in the environment, what can be done? Other constituents have certainly been in touch with us on the council about the issue of, and this may not be directly related to the fire department, but when the hospital comes down, when that's demolished, that will we be following best practices to make sure no particulate matters or anything of hazardous contaminants will be surrounding that neighborhood when that time comes. So anyway, once again, I appreciate Chief Moore for his direct information. I wish we had more of it because, again, as a member of City Council, we are getting a lot of constituent concerns, and I see a lot of the really good questions in the chat tonight too that I hope there are answers forthcoming to. But thank you very much.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
We can hear you, Grace.
Okay. I was just concerned because the only thing that seems to be monitored is the dust that's raised during the mitigation process, and also the air quality during the mitigation process. And I'm concerned about, for one thing, the mitigation or the air quality during the burn itself, which certainly affected many of the residents who were watching at the time. And also the dust, which may no longer be on the surface because we had so many heavy rains directly after the fire. It's going to go into the groundwater. The lead doesn't go away. No one seems to be, if it's not on the surface in its form of flakes of lead paint, it doesn't seem to be counted as an environmental hazard. But I also thank the fire marshal for his candor.
I believe that is all of the public comment.
Well, on that, thank you everyone for coming. Chief, thank you for your report, for your honesty and candor, for the work you're doing. And I know the board looks forward to future conversations about this unfortunate, this is terrible event here in Bloomington. Chief, I was about to close the meeting, and then that question in the chat, it goes to the question I asked earlier about responding to questions and how we are able to, I don't know what makes sense for you moving forward. When people call you and ask you questions directly, is there a way, because I assume folks in the affected areas and beyond, they have the same sorts of questions and concerns about what happens and how we move forward. what are we doing to get that information? You know, the questions you get individually to be answered publicly in a more universal way, not just on a one-on-one basis. Are you doing anything in that regard?
Yeah, I know that this may be a little out of procedure, but again, for sake of transparency, we're not trying to hide anything. We want to be very open, and I do have a very good audience. So I do want to address a few of those things. To the gentleman that mentioned about partnering with the neighborhood association, please reach out to me. I'm always building community connections. The more connections we have with our community, the more they understand what we do, how we do it, and how we can benefit each other. When we talk about the comments that I've read, I'm taking a very proactive approach. So I am writing down all these questions. If I can track who asked the question, a lot of them are on our list of people that have requested remediation. I will try to address them. If you don't hear from me, then obviously you have my email is firechief@bloomington.in.gov. Our phone number is posted on the BFD Burn Info webpage. My direct office number was posted on the printed material that was handed out. I would welcome any and all communications. And again, I just, the conversations I've had with people, I want them to understand, I am a father. I do have kids. I do have pets. I do understand the stresses that people are under. And I don't want to assume that I fully understand everything they're going through, but I do feel it. As a public servant, I got into this job to help people. Our entire department, nobody's in this job to harm people. And we do want to make this right. And we do want to make sure that we are worthy of the trust that has been built over 121 years of serving this community. So with that, I do look forward to conversations and support from City Council, the mayor, even yourselves as we pursue state changes. Again, just because we never do it here doesn't mean it's not being done other places. And I think that we have a duty to respond to that. This is not something that in my awareness of talking to chiefs in not only this state, but other states has ever been addressed. So we do need to address it. And I need to think about more of a global impact of where do we fit in that picture of addressing problems. And I'm not happy of just addressing them here locally. So with that, I will take all the recommendations. I will take the comments. I will make sure this board is included in future communications. And I will continue to do everything I can to be open, transparent, and help people resolve their issues like we do every single day in this department. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chief. And I'll speak for myself, but I trust on behalf of the board in saying that we look forward to talking with you about this and moving forward and fixing that which must be fixed and helping as we can. Thank you.
The motion to adjourn?
Was that a motion?
Yes, it was.
Have a second?
Second.
Well, so we are adjourned. Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you for your thoughtful comments. And Chief, again, thank you for your report. Greatly appreciated. Thank you, everyone. Good evening.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Evening.